All right, everybody, the NBA playoffs are underway, and man, we are seeing some kind of shows. Of course, we got Bob Ryan, Jeff Goodman. It is the Ryan Goodman Pod. I'm Gary Tanguay. Okay, I'm going to do an apology to the Celtics. I thought this series with the Nets would go 7. And for me, and I've been taking a lot of heat from Celtics honks, but that's fine. But to me, until you beat the big stars, you're still in doubt. And I thought it would go 7, but I thought, quite frankly, Durant was the big surprise. Durant finally showed up in the final game, but I thought Durant would carry the Nets with the help of Kyrie over a very good Celtic team. Jeff, I'll start with you. What went wrong? What went right?
Yeah, I mean, I was wrong, and obviously we questioned the Nets and whether they could guard anybody, but we didn't question whether Kevin Durant would show up and be effective, right? I mean, we felt like his offense would be better than the number one defense in the NBA. Well, it was not. And they frustrated him and ultimately got KD thinking too much. And he said that. It was overthinking on his part because everywhere he went, there was somebody, and they were long and athletic, other than maybe Grant Williams is not the most athletic, but everybody else is seemingly long and athletic on this team. And they just had an answer. They frustrated him early. And listen, the Nets just don't have a third guy. And if you don't have a third guy and your number one or two, one of them are off, and they had times in the series when both KD and Kyrie were off, you're in trouble. And team won over individuals here is ultimately what it came down to.
Right.
Team and chemistry, which we never thought we'd say of this Celtics team, won over individual play. And I don't want to say selfishness, because I don't think KD's selfish. I actually thought he was probably too unselfish in this series.
I, too, called it differently. I said Celtics in a hard 6 and maybe a 7, but a hard 6. I thought, who somebody had better provide some empirical proof that he or she predicted this the way it panned out. Somewhere in this world that someone of consequence actually or intelligence actually predicted the Celtics would sweep. Now I have a question. First of all, before I get to addressing Durant, gentlemen, would you have been more impressed with this had one or two of the games been thorough routs, or is the fact that they won 4 competitive close games more impressive to you as an achievement?
Yeah. I'm with you on the close games because they've won enough routes this year.
Right.
And I think you're going to be in close games against Milwaukee. You're going to be, if you're fortunate enough to get past Milwaukee, and I think it's going to be Milwaukee, but to play Miami. And I think you're going to be in close games against whether it's Miami or Philly. So you might as well figure out how to win close games when it matters. And I think they did that in this series.
And that was a question about them earlier in the year. That they had a woeful record in close games for a great portion of this season.
Well, because Tatum, the difference, Bob, the difference is Tatum would get the ball and he would end up taking some bad shots. Let's face it, some bad decision-making on Tatum's part, whether it was that he didn't know what to do, his dribble wasn't quite tight enough that he could kind of get where he wanted all the time. And even if they doubled him, he would force things. Now it's like, all right, double me, guys. I trust my teammates. I'm going to move the ball and get an easy shot for Marcus Smart. And you know what? If he doesn't have one, he's going to move the ball. So it all starts with Jayson Tatum in his decision-making at the end of close games.
Yeah, we saw that in
You know what flashed in my head, and I hadn't thought about this individual in any context for any reason in months, when you talked about that haphazard dribbling, they're not tight and doing the wrong thing. Antoine Walker, the ultimate player whose whole did not come close to equaling the sum of its parts. But anyway, yes, the play that ended game 1, it was no possible way would have transpired in the months of November, December, and January, and even January probably. The play that ended game 1 was not part of anything they could have done. That told us right then and there how far they had advanced. Okay.
There's no doubt. Yeah, there's no doubt. And even I believe game 4, the final game, the Nets would get back to what, 4 or maybe 6, then the Celtics would pull away. A couple of baskets are up by 10. So even when the Celtics were up by 6, Bob, I felt the game wasn't in doubt.
I call them accordion games, accordion moments. Squeeze block in and then out. They pulled the right. They had the answer. And right down to game 4, it got down to 1, but they made plays. After he fouled out. And by the way, on the scale of 1 to 10, the call
10
out was a 11.
So bad,
and ought to result in that referee being sanctioned by the officials. They have to. He's got to. There's got to be a punishment for that. It's not just the context of the time, where you have to. You know how I feel about refereeing and time, but it was the guy falls down, and he falls down because the other guy fell down, and then they foul him out of the game. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Anyway.
But the league sanctions it. I mean, we could go a whole other direction, but the league wants a game 5, right? That's a theory.
I don't want to. I don't want. I know once a game 5, probably the ownership of the. I always say that the ownership of the team. Do owners of a team up with the home court advantage up 3-0? Are they really going to cry if they lose game 4 and have to come home and play a 5th game at home?
Not if they can beat Kyrie and send him out at the TD Garden. Also,
I've always wondered about that. But anyway.
A couple of million a game. I mean, it's a couple of million a game.
But I'm proud of this. I'm proud of the Celtics for the way they handled that last week, the last game, and whereas Milwaukee went in the tank, they chose not to, and were amply rewarded for their virtue by the way that the Nets series turned out.
Okay, so can the Celtics go? I'm not going to say. I'm not. Well, sure. Can they go all the way?
Let's just go next series. Forget about all the way. Forget about all the way. Let's be the coach, right? The veteran coach. Let's take it one series at a time, right, Bob?
Oh, Jeff, you're just so reasonable.
Let's remember where we came from.
Right, exactly.
If we could go back to the beginning of the year and my proclamation after like 3 games, here's the Celtics, guys. They're annoying. Remember I said that?
Yeah.
Yes.
They're annoying.
Yeah.
Which they were.
More than once.
And now I feel like a proud papa watching them play. It's so much fun to watch them play. But I like Jeff, don't want to get ahead of the game here. Right. I'm just enjoying it. Now, I know I'm a hard marker in this, and many people hate to hear it. Right now, for me, they are officially playing with house money. Officially playing with house money right now. And I'm happy, and I'm telling you, I promise you, I will be able to live with them not getting by Milwaukee or Miami, who I really respect. The more I see Miami, I think about Miami, they're so solid. I mean, what they're doing, and they can absorb. They have so many weapons. Duncan Robinson had a game earlier in the series where he was 8 threes. And he's had 2 snickeroos since then, including last night when he was 0 for 5, all threes, of course, in 12 minutes, contributed nothing. He had another game where he contributed nothing. Well, okay. They got other guys. They got so many, and they didn't have.
I'll go one further, Bob. I'll go one further for you. Victor Oladipo didn't play for 2 weeks. Didn't play, and he comes off, and I think he got like 40 in the regular season finale, which was a nothing game.
Yeah.
But obviously, he's not the same player that he was before the injuries. And last night, he was the best player on the floor on the offensive end. And oh, by the way, he shut Trae Young down at the end of the game.
We'll get to that. I want to get to that, Trae Young thing. But yeah, you're right. So anyway, we're back. The Celtics, folks, just enjoy it. Yeah. I mean, you can dream a little bit. I can't prevent you from dreaming a little bit, but just enjoy it. I mean, it's just don't stress. I mean, I don't want the people ever coming down on them if they do no more than what they've done. I don't want to hear any negatives about it. This
is the way to do it too, Bob, isn't it?
As long as they keep playing the way they're playing. As long as they keep sticks to the program,
right? Which they're not going to stray now.
Don't deviate.
Right.
Don't go back to the Antoine Walkerism. Go back to play the way you're playing. Which now, one more, I have to throw this out. I thought one of the great side benefits of sweeping was extra time off for who, the big guy.
Yeah.
Like I'm rooting for the Bulls, although the Bulls are so depleted. I don't know. They could beat,
not in Milwaukee.
But it's going to be Milwaukee. But all the time they can get because Robert Williams isn't fully ready yet. He needs to. But if they're whatever.
Who's not ready yet? You know who's not ready yet? Chris Middleton on the other side. And that's a huge, huge difference maker in this next series. If Milwaukee holds on, is Middleton's out with that. I think it's a sprained MCL.
Yeah.
He's out for the rest of this series. They don't know when he'll be back for the second round. So if they don't have Middleton, as I've said, Middleton is the Robin to Giannis being the Batman. And he's so understated in everything he does, but so vital to everything that the Bucks did, have done, will continue to do in terms of trying to repeat.
Before I don't know how much more we want to go on the Celtics, but I want to cite one guy that he just deserves, Grant Williams. Grant Williams, you know, first of all, he's money in that corner. We know that, and I was explaining to my wife, you realize this is a man who started his career 0 for 25 on threes. And unlike a certain elongated mental health, troubled young man who now does not play for the Nets, unlike that man, he obviously went to work to rectify his situation and become a better shooter. Unlike that other guy who has never seen fit to bother to improve his game. I won't mention any names,
sure.
But anyway. And then the defensive, he's so solid. He is a basketball player.
Yeah.
I keep saying I wish he were 6'9". I mean,
if he were 6'9", Bob, he wouldn't have fallen to where he did in the NBA draft.
Right. I know, you're right. But so he's a pleasure.
So, but before we leave the Celtics, the question I have for both of you, Jeff, I'll start with you, is with Udoka, as far as pushing the buttons, because if you take a look at the way they handled Durant, obviously he knows all about Kevin Durant. They salt him. You know, they had the answer for KD defensively. So Udoka is kind of getting credit for being a Jackson-type guru. But what about his strategy? Is his strategy as a coach underrated?
Well, I think what he's done is kind of the new age way of defending in basketball. If you can do it, if you have the right personnel, it's get long athletic dudes and switch everything defensively. And they have the right players for that, right? I mean, you've got Robert Williams as a big, or Al Horford, two guys that can move. And Al is just so cerebral. Even if he's not 25 and super athletic, he's like the smartest dude on the floor at all times. So he's never going to be out of position. Robert Williams obviously was gifted athletically to be able to run and move like a guard. And then you got those long wings, right? Whoever it is, Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Grant's, again, not athletic, but he's got decent size. And again, cerebral. I put Grant more in the kind of Al Horford, that's kind of the type of player he is, just knowing one step ahead. So I think you had the right personnel for Ime to be able to do this. And it's worked because a guy like KD never has a lot of space to work with when you switch like this. And the Celtics do a great job of, even after switching, their rotations are good. They're always kind of making up for each other's mistakes, even if they're not mistakes. They're making up for each other and being there for one another. And that's not something we saw really over the last year or two.
Even Tice fits into this discussion because he's not anchored to the floor. He can get off the floor. He can move laterally, and he's not dumb. He fits into a degree. And
Derek White.
And then thank you very much. The two, which brings us to trading deadline day. It looks like a stroke of absolute genius now. They didn't bring in great players; they brought in useful players. And that's what they needed. And so
locker room guys.
So Brad Stevens gets some credit for this.
Yes, he gets. Everybody gets credit. Danny gets credit. After all, he had two back-to-back drafts of two of the third pick in the draft, and he maneuvered to get Tatum on a year when there was a number one that everybody thought was going to be the number one, and and he was, but he did turn out his life.
That's actually I'll push back on that. I will push back on that a little bit.
All right,
Markelle Fultz. Yeah, at the end, everybody was like, "Oh, he should go number one. He should go number." There was a huge debate going in then, to me of who was the number one pick. I mean, I kind of fell prey to it at the end too, a little bit with Markelle. But as you know, nobody was a bigger Jayson Tatum fan than me. And I think a lot of people we're wondering, all right, who should be the number one pick? Lonzo, Markelle Fultz, or Jayson Tatum?
I thought Bob was a Tatum guy, and I remember I was also doing a weekly segment with John Feinstein at the time. Shocking. I mean, but he liked Tatum too. But Bob, didn't you like Tatum?
I liked him, but I liked him, but I didn't. I can't say
nobody saw this coming. No.
Okay. All right.
Probably myself, and I don't know. Listen, I don't know if I'd say I'm that surprised. Like I am, but I'm not. I'm surprised based on
Jeff. Let me help you out. He had the ability.
Right.
You just didn't know if he was able to put to do it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And part of it was who he was surrounded by.
Right. Yeah, the guys in Brooklyn.
Situational. So much of it is situational. Who's your point guard? Who are you playing with? Again, I felt like this was a team that was full of non-ball movers because that's what they had shown us for so long, that they were more, a team based on individuals and not moving the basketball, and instead, all being about ISO and doing it themselves. And then all of a sudden, man, again, I'd still love to know exactly what triggered it. Yeah. I think it was probably a combination of things, but it has completely flipped.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, let's move on. And injuries, I know Jeff wants to talk about injuries, which will probably be in a lot of these topics. But Philly, to me, Doc's got the heat on. They got to close this out. Now we have Embiid again with a hand issue. And the thing with Embiid, even when he's healthy, I'm always waiting for him to get hurt, And so how do we feel about Philly right now? And as we record this, they are up 3-2 on Toronto. Bob, I'll let you go with that.
Well, I feel very nervous, and I say that, and I have to have a full disclosure. I'm not neutral on Doc Rivers as a human being. I consider myself in his circle of good acquaintances. I'm not going to say close friend. That's pompous. But I like Doc. I like Doc because he's one of my favorite people that I've ever dealt with in the NBA. And I fear if this happens again, and it's already probably going to be there forever with him. But if this ever happens again, there is no doubt that this is the way he's going to be remembered as opposed to all his accomplishments, including winning a championship. This is going to stamp him because, Jeff, help me out on this too. And Gary, can you think of any other guy in his 75 years to the league that's more associated with 3-1 collapses than Doc's teams? The answer is no.
It's a bummer. We all love him. We all love the guy.
I think they'll hold on.
But this is terrible. Yeah. I don't want it to happen. I'm not, and the answer is, I don't know what it's all about. I have no idea. I don't understand. And should it be all put on him? It's going to be on him, so I'm nervous. I want him to win. I want him to win. I don't want to have to go to a seventh game with all the pressure that would be in Philadelphia either. That would be a lot of pressure.
Yep.
So I'm worried. I'm very troubled by this, frankly. I'll be honest.
Yeah, I think they hold on, but man, Embiid isn't the same player with his finger injury.
The thing is serious. Yeah. And here's the other thing, though, guys. It's interesting. They look so good in the beginning. First two games, they look like the team to fear in the East.
They were my pick.
Well, I think
we all overreact.
I think I jumped right on that one too, Garrett. I think I jumped right on that bandwagon. They look so good, and one of the reasons was because once again, this is where your heart has to be, put in check as opposed to your head, and that is the Maxey thing. Maxey looks so good, and I'm claiming Maxey is a find. I have this daughter. I have this with my daughter. We kid about college. He's mine. I own Booker. No, I saw Booker first. I own Sheboy. No, I saw Sheboy first. In this case, Maxey is mine. I loved him in Kentucky.
Champions Classic got you, Bob. Champion right out of the gates. He was terrific that first game. And listen, the problem with Maxey is he's not going for 20 or 18 every night. And James Harden looks like he just got done playing at the YMCA these days.
Yeah,
he just does. He's just not the same player. Whether, again, it's the change in rules where he's not getting every call that he got, or he's just older and he looks older. Whatever it is, James Harden could dominate a game and go for 40 any night, 3-4 years ago. That is not – listen, he can't even get you 20 any night right now. So with Embiid hurt and with Harden being a shell of himself and with Maxey, you not knowing what you're going to get, and Tobias Harris, same kind of deal right now. Yeah. I don't know. I think they win this series and close it out because, again, they're the better team. But if Toronto, they've got momentum now, who knows at this point?
And there's a muscle memory there about how they won a championship with the coach is still the coach. And certain guys, Siakam is decided, to play. I mean, he's playing great. And, they got some people and they do have a coach I think they're a dangerous not wounded, but I mean, a fired up bunch right now. There will be a difficult out for anybody if they get by this. I mean, they're not going to get down easily, and they're not going down easily now. So I don't know. I just hope it doesn't happen. I don't want to hear about it for Doc. I just don't. I'm not going to lie about that.
Okay, so what has been a terrific series so far? Let's go to Memphis and Minnesota. And last night's game, the final, what a game. Of course, the Grizzlies coming back, that's really not a surprise. Going into the fourth, like, this is not over.
It's the end.
Yeah, I mean, this is not over. We knew that. But while I want to give John Morant credit for those who watched, saw the end of it, this was also the inexperience in Minnesota. To me, the defense really kind of messed up on that one, because if you give Ja that much room to get to the basket, you got to score. So while I'm a huge Ja guy, Jeff Goodman, I think the inexperience and the overexuberance of Minnesota cost them.
Yeah, I mean, well, both teams are inexperienced, right? I mean, neither team has a bunch of dudes that have been there before. So it's almost like, all right, who's the team with more poise? And neither has showed a ton of poise in the series. But you probably say, hey, I trust these guys in Memphis more than I trust these guys in Minnesota, whether it's Cat, whether it's Anthony Edwards, whether, whoever it is. To me, I trust Desmond Bane more. I do. I mean, talk about a guy that, again, everybody was knocking him. He comes out of TCU and he's got short arms. So, that's why he falls in the NBA draft, to be honest. Mm-hmm. If he had long arms, he probably would have went late lottery. Instead, he falls to the final pick of the first round. And Memphis gets a guy that just is all about the right things. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think the difference between Memphis and Minnesota is for me. Memphis is based on culture already. They're young guys, but the Jaws, the Dylan Brookses, the Jalen Jacksons, the Desmond Baines, Tyus Jones, all these guys to me are about winning and about team, where I'm not sure you could say the same thing for Minnesota. I think these guys, Anthony Edwards, Cat to some degree, are based more on individual play than team.
Talent. And that's why, and Edwards is exhibit A. He could go up for 40 points in the next game.
He had a bonehead defensive play at the end too.
Yeah, but he could go up for 40 the next game, and turn it around. But I think I think Memphis is they're a team with a bullet. They're a team to watch and to look. The future is good. If they can keep this group together, I think they're going to, and obviously they're excited. But we knew before the series, this was targeted, could be a fireworks series, and it has been, to that degree, to some degree, a fireworks series. You get the jaw though. I mean, boy.
All right, so give me now. They asked me this last night on NBC Boston, not a list of top 5, but give me your top 5 players in the NBA today. I know it's hard as hell, Bob. But they asked me, is Tatum Tatum in the top 5 today?
Start with number one. Number one is Giannis.
Yeah.
Period. Yep. And don't be foolish enough to argue that, right?
Don't overthink it.
Number one is Giannis. Number 2, healthy, or in the top 5, also in the top 5 healthy, is Embiid.
Yep. Agreed.
Okay. Jokic, the 3
somewhere
MVP
in there.
Candidates.
Yep.
I'd say Morant. And right now, Tatum.
You're putting Tatum ahead of KD.
Right now?
Yeah, right now,
yes.
yeah.
We just saw it.
Yeah. I don't know about Jokic. Yeah, okay.
A decade younger.
Well, Jokic's problem is defensively. That's the problem for Jokic defensively.
Well, you're right. Because they played the offense-defense thing the other night.
Exactly.
If KD replaces anybody, it's Jokic.
Okay, they placed the offense-defense thing for people who don't know, which you at that level is not really rare to see, but they saw it to get him out of the game. And in the last minute, they were playing that which you see in college a lot. You see.
Well, Bob, I want to get back to something you mentioned. You wanted to mention Trae Young. I mean, when we saw Ja Morant and Trae Young, they kind of came on the scene together.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I don't think you can compare the two.
Well, Young's going to have a very long off season. I can tell you that. It's going to be a lot of soul searching. I mean, we'll get to him, but there's no. How can you compare the two right now based on what we saw last night as a microcosm?
Well, the difference here's the difference for me is Trae is such a liability in the defensive end. If he's not making shots, he's killing you. Where Ja is so athletic and bigger and stronger, even if he's not making shots from three, he's going to be able to take it to the basket and finish, number one. And defensively, he's not great, but he's not a liability. And that's where, to me, Tatum gets in the top five, is because of all those guys we talked about, he might be the most well-rounded of any player in the NBA right now. Give me a more well-rounded player than Jayson Tatum.
Giannis.
But he doesn't shoot it like Tatum.
No, he doesn't shoot it like – right, okay, you're right. No, he doesn't shoot it like Tatum.
Right? Like Tatum can score wherever you want him to score and however you want him to score. He can do that.
Well, you can say that about Embiid, can't you?
Yes.
Yeah, kind of. He doesn't pass it as well as Tatum, but he's
agreed.
But shooting-wise, he's there's nothing – there's no but.
Right. Yeah, Embiid would be close. I just feel like if you put the prototypical best all-around player in the NBA and you put a picture of somebody, right now you're putting a picture of Jayson Tatum there.
Another guy to throw in the discussion is Booker.
Yeah, he's terrific.
Got to put him in the discussion.
Yep. And where's Steph? Where's a healthy Steph?
Right. Yeah, right.
Well, I mean, it's kind of the new guard. It's a lot of new names, you know.
You mean the new sixth man of the year candidate?
All right, well, let's get to the injuries. Well, I mean, you mentioned Booker. You've already talked about Middleton. Yep. So, Jeff, you're hot on this. Well, let's start with Booker, and then, the fact that it's really impacting the season this year.
Yeah, I think overall, to me, is the key with this. It's almost kind of, all right, the team that wins this whole thing might be the team that's the healthiest. And right now, you could argue that it's the Boston Celtics, right? Like, you got Robert Williams back. You haven't been healthy for 2 years. You've had somebody out. Well, Phoenix has got Booker. Milwaukee's got Middleton. Philly's got Embiid. Lowry and Jimmy Butler just sat out last night. Now, they didn't have to win it. They probably would have played if it had been a game 7, but they still sat out a huge game. Capella was out. Joe Harris was out for the Nets. Ben Simmons obviously didn't play. Denver's without Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr.
Yep.
Who am I forgetting?
Golden State's back healthy again, right?
Other than Wiseman, who I know most people will not even value. But let me tell you, if James Wiseman was healthy for 2 years, James Wiseman would be a problem right now, and exactly what the doctor ordered.
Let me put on my historical cap for a moment.
Yeah.
This is not a new phenomenon. This year, it's certainly accentuated this year. And I've had injuries on my top of my list to talk about a lot. Okay. And the effect of it, but it just so often it's the case. Let's go back to 1958. And the reason why the Celtics didn't win 12 out of 13 instead of 11 out of 13. Is there anybody outside of St. Louis, Missouri, who actually thinks the Celtics wouldn't have won if Russell weren't hurt in 58? Come on, stop it. And it still took 50 points by the great Bob Pettit to beat them by 2 in Game 6 with Russell limping around. Okay, forget that. I can fast forward 1967. Does anybody outside of Boston think that Philly might have, 68, might have prevailed if Billy Cunningham hadn't missed the whole series against the Celtics in 1968? Well, guess what? And then when they came from 3-1 down, first team ever to do that in the NBA, by the way, okay? Let's fast forward to 1983, the 76ers and the Lakers. James Worthy didn't play.
I remember that one.
Thank you very much. Let's fast forward to 1989, the Pistons versus the Lakers. Byron Scott is out, and the Magic gets hurt. They get swept. Magic was a shell. Scott wasn't even there. All right, I make my point, gentlemen, and I'm sure we can find many more examples in the 90s and the 10s, and it's always a possibility. But
sure.
I'll say this, though, Jeff, you're right. Never so all-pervasive.
Crazy.
I was citing one specific example of a team, usually in the finals, and we are talking about
Every
cloud
team.
hanging over both conference playoffs in the first round.
Yes.
And
every team is
major
affected.
games. Put the all-star team together that we're talking about right now. Yeah, I'd like to put that team on the floor. I'd like to take Embiid and Booker and Lowry and Butler.
Middleton.
And Middleton.
Lonzo Ball's out in Chicago.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I'd like to do that. I think that team would be pretty good.
I mean, how about AD? I mean, the thing, like what Jeff mentioned.
Luka was hurt. Hey, Luka was hurt. Could that have cost them a series?
There we go. So it's really been
Van Vliet. Hey, Van Vliet's hurt. I mean, every team has, I feel like every team has one of their top 2 players that's either been hurt. And the Celtics, like I said, which is crazy because all they've talked about is injuries for the last 2 years. They may honestly be the ones who benefit the most when it matters most.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's if nothing else happens,
right.
But then again, but you're so right to say it is the story. It's almost the story of the playoffs. And the number one story of the playoffs is the demise of the Nets. The outside world is not looking at this as much as the Celtics were great, as much as the Nets sucked and the Nets screwed up and then and all that. The outside world is looking at it that way, and it's inevitable. Yeah. But that's the number one story. But the number 2 story is the fact that there's so many people who are hurt.
Well, I do want to. I forgot to mention this earlier when we were talking about the Nets. Jeff raised a good question, Bob. I mean, is Nash the right guy to coach this team?
Well, I think that's being questioned right now. A lot, definitely being questioned. Remember when he got the job without coaching credentials? He got the job on reputation of being a great Hall of Fame player and a multi MVP and a good guy and a smart guy, but never having coached. He didn't have any answers for them. No, I mean it could. He may not be, and he may pay the price. Who knows how Joe Tsai's going to react or how.
Do you think he cares, Bob? Bob, ultimately, in a way, do you think Steve Nash secretly is thinking man, I hope they fire me. I don't want to deal with this crap again.
I'm sure this is not what he envisioned. No, I'm sure very definitely not. And I don't want to be the fog. I mean, he might. Hey, who knows? He might jump before he gets pushed and say, I don't need this shit. And he doesn't. By the way, Steve Nash doesn't need that.
No, he does not.
And he's the most positive dude. I talked to somebody who's very close with that staff and everything, and they said, this guy is the most positive human being in the world. So if anybody can deal with all the drama over the last couple of years, it is Steve Nash. But at some point you look at it and you say, all right, if KD and Kyrie can't listen and learn and respect a guy who's a 2-time MVP and 8-time NBA All-Star, who the hell are they going to respect? Magic? I mean, who are you going to bring in?
Remember what I like to go back to what people saying with Brady when Brady gave the interview with Jim Gray and asked about whether he was appreciated and said, I plead the fifth. And, people should have right then and there, been put on notice while something was going on in Foxborough. When because he's so crazy, when Kyrie Irving said that we don't need a coach, you don't need a coach. Just file that one away in the back of your head.
Right.
For any coach walking into that job, he should be made aware of, and you know what? Take Kyrie at his word.
Well, also, though, we've seen, especially in the NBA, to me, you have guys that have had great careers that have been all, Hall of Fame careers. And, can coaching match anything that Steve Nash has experienced? I mean, like Jeff just said, why would Steve Nash care? 8-time All-Star, 2-time MVP. I mean, at one point, the guy was the human highlight film of the NBA, right? The only thing, he didn't get a title. So, is this going to really hurt Steve Nash? Probably not. So that brings my question to you, Bob Ryan, is, other than Larry Bird, when, with the Pacers, and they did go to the finals, is this another example of why usually a Hall of Fame type player doesn't make a great head coach?
The reason I don't want to sign on to that is the specific nature of this circumstance, because you're talking about Kyrie Irving being involved.
Right. It's not fair.
And
you can't judge Steve Nash.
There's never been a comparable person, really, of consequence in this league with the complicated nature of Kyrie Irving.
That's right.
That you have to deal with. And so I have to say I can't, throw him in that category. But as you were speaking, I'm thinking about the great players, the truly great, the Hall of Fame level players, the great ones who have attempted coaching and thinking about who's been successful. And there was no career like the Larry Bird's. Larry Bird, who said in the beginning, I'm coaching 3 years.
That's it.
And he goes to one final. He misses out 20 seconds away from getting to one finals on a jump ball that he still regrets that he didn't think he lined the guys up properly against the Bulls. I mean, really, he takes the blame for this. And he gets to a finals with a team that had no chance to win, but he got to the finals, and then he quit. In 3 years, as he said, he did the job. He did the job, okay? Elgin Baylor was a terrible coach. Jerry West, and one of the things in winning time that I have to say is reasonably true is Jerry West was not a good coach and knew he wasn't a good coach and didn't want to coach. Okay, that's fine. Bill Russell won 2 championships with himself as the key player. That always helps, you know.
Yeah, that one's not fair.
Yeah. Did a serviceable job in Seattle, and he got him to the playoffs twice. And he also had a good eye for talent, young talent. Okay, but Willis Reed, we can go on and on, you know. But Steve Nash, I hate to judge him on this one. This is an abnormal team, a circumstance, you know.
As we wrap it up, gentlemen, and I know Jeff is winning timed out, but I'm only going to say one thing.
Oh, no.
I'm going to say one thing. And I don't know if Bob has continued on, but I'm updated on the series. Jerry West is the reason Showtime existed. He is, because of what Bob just said. I just want to say that right now. The fact that he stepped down, the fact that he hired Jack McKinney, and the conversations he had with Magic Johnson, Jerry West is the reason the 80s Lakers were so. I mean, he's the beginning. That's all I'm saying. And it's depicted well in this series, and he gets that credit.
All right, I'm just going to say one thing, Jeff. You can put your hands over your ears, but you don't have to. It's not going to be that bad. Yes, Gary, I've gotten through episode 7. Okay, I've gone through episode 7. And I read the book this week. I read the entire book. The book is magnificent. I recommend the book to any basketball fan who lived through it or who wants to learn about what it was really all about. Yeah. The book, Showtime, Jeff Pearlman, I highly recommend. Okay, period. And I am writing for the upcoming Sunday Globe. And I'm unloading, Jeff. I'm unloading. And I'll put forth my feeling about the whole thing, which includes my feeling about the book, which should be read. But yes, so I'm keeping up. Gary.
Okay, I just thought that was interesting.
No,
because I never knew that. I mean, West. There's one line in there. I just have to say this because it's a great line. The character of Jayson, and there's some truth to this. In order to be like to reach the pinnacle of these athletes, there's some truth in what he says. And it actually made me think of Belichick. The West character played by Jason Clark says to Magic Johnson, "Happy is overrated."
Well, that would be a very classic Jerry West.
Jerry West, happy is overrated. Misery gets you wins. And I'm going to watch this
once the NBA playoffs. Once the NBA playoffs are over, or there's not a million games on every night, then I will get to it. Right now, it's hard for me to watch because there's an NBA game on every night, all night. So until we start to get deeper in the playoffs and there's not as much on, that's when I'll watch it.
I thought of Belichick with that.
Can I throw one more topic quickly out there?
Sure.
Because this involves the world that you well know far better than I. That is that Jay Wright has unofficially opened the door to a possible career in the NBA. He said, I need to get away right now. I know I did the right thing leaving Villanova. Yeah. I know I can't bring the same energy and enthusiasm and everything to the job that I should. But I'm not, but he's infatuated with the NBA. He did, in fact, was an assistant coach with Pop on the USA team. Yeah. He enjoyed his experience. He's a young 60.
That he is.
Young 60. Yeah. And physically and emotionally, mentally, the whole package. So I'm just throwing out there. We may have something to talk about.
He'll be an old 61.
Here's the thing, Bob, with Jay Wright. Jay Wright saw the handwriting on the wall. Okay, he saw where this was going with the transfer portal, even though he didn't have to deal with it personally, and where NIL is. There's a kid, I don't know if you saw this. There's a kid from Kansas State named Nigel Pack. He was a leading scorer, averaged about 17 points a game for a team in which their coach got fired, Bruce Weber. They were under 500 last year. He went in the transfer portal, and he signed a deal for $400,000 each of the next 2 years to go to Miami. And he also got a car. This big booster in Miami has been John Ruiz is his name. He owns a couple different companies down there. Lawyer, got a ton of money, billionaire, and he is basically paying football players and basketball players in excess. Isaiah Wong signed a deal. He was one of the players who helped take Miami to the Elite Eight this past year. He signed a deal for $100,000, an NIL deal, a couple of weeks ago. Well, he's going to renegotiate now. He's going to make more than $400,000. So these players that are good players, not great players. We're not talking even Oscar Tshiebwe, Hunter Dickinson, that level type player. They're going to be making, and they're just going in the portal. A kid named Baylor Shireman. He went to South Dakota State last year. Terrific player. I would be shocked if he doesn't end up transferring and getting in excess of $400,000 a year from whether it's some guy like John Ruiz, a Miami booster, or some other booster, and they just call it NIL, but it's pay for play.
Sure. Well, you knew this was going to happen. And you knew it was going to happen in the South, in the Southeastern Conference in football. And you knew it's going to, oh, yeah. I mean, it's all, Jane doesn't need this. And suddenly, what's he got to prove at Villanova? No, I said, oh, we know that's why Roy Williams got out right away. We know that. I saw it coming. We know
Smart move.
Yeah. So it's a changing world, which leads us to Mark Emmert, but that's a topic for another day and another season. And
we just applaud it. Can I do that? I don't need to say anything, but can we applaud the retirement of Mark?
You speak for you clap for many. I know that.
Everybody, not many. Everybody.
But anyway, we'll get to that.
All right, guys.
We're focused on the NBA and the playoffs. A lot of great stuff we've seen. A lot of great stuff coming. Let's get healthy, everybody. Damn it! I don't want people crying in their beer about not having players.
And we'll keep an eye on Jay Wright. And I think he's crazy if he takes an NBA gig, but he'll get paid and he'll age quickly.
If Philadelphia, the 76ers open in a year or two, I don't know if he takes it today. I think he'd like the year off, but maybe. I mean, that's the job that I've talked to him about for years. I don't know, but if the Sixers go hard after Jay Wright, it might be a tough decision for him to say no.
Guys, we'll talk to you next week. Thanks.
Very good, guys.